How long, truly, how long, have you been playing this game? Walking through the theater of their assumptions, wearing that perfect porcelain mask of innocence as though it were fused to your very being. A mask so flawless that even the most suspicious eye could not quite pierce it, even when their instincts told them that something was wrong, even when they felt the faint dissonance that hummed behind your smile. How long have you endured the endless chatter of their theories, the midnight whispers of their conspiracies, the trembling excitement in their voices as they convinced themselves that they were clever enough to corner you, to trap you, to finally expose the truth they thought you had buried? Was it 5 years, 7, a decade? Does it even matter anymore? For you mastered patience in ways they could never imagine, stretching seconds into hours, and hours into centuries. And with every passing moment you stood calmly, poised, orchestrating what may well be remembered as the most exquisite deception in human history. They thought they had you figured out, pinned down, decoded like some cipher, scribbled in a beginner's notebook. And yet what they never realized, what they never could realize, was that the smile on your lips was not surrender, it was not resignation. It was amusement, a razored amusement that sliced through their illusions as you watched them study shadows while you moved entire constellations unseen. They thought the tears you shed were real, that the cracks in your armor were evidence of fracture, that your vulnerability was authentic, and they rushed in eagerly, desperate to exploit it, to celebrate their cleverness in discovering your supposed weakness. Yet all along it was theater, performance, a carefully crafted stage play where every line, every stumble, every pause had been rehearsed. They were never the directors, no matter how loudly they declared themselves the authors of your story. They were only the audience, spellbound, hypnotized, applauding the very script you had written years before. They even knew the curtain had risen, and what's more hilarious, what's more tragic, is that they actually believed they were the hunters. These self-declared detectives, clutching at scraps of screenshots, collaging together fragments of conversations, buzzing through group chats like wasps trapped in glass jars, trading notes and congratulating themselves on their genius. They stayed up late whispering theories, drawing timelines, piecing together who you really were, as if the answer could be solved by some crude equation. You fed them. You placed breadcrumbs with meticulous care. Every detail calculated, every reaction timed, every emotional display calibrated to keep them chasing ghosts, while you built empires in broad daylight. They combed through ashes, looking for your secrets while you stood in plain sight, torching entire forests into existence. And now, finally, the curtain begins to fall. Not because you were caught, not because they forced your hand, but because you, and only you, have chosen this moment. You dropped the mask not out of necessity, but out of timing. Because timing is everything. Because you knew when the audience had invested too much, when they could no longer walk away, when they had made you the center of their identity. That is when you strike. That is when you reveal. That is when you remind them they were never in control. Do you see the cruel beauty of it, the identity leak they now celebrate, as though it were the crown jewel of their investigation? That was not a slip, not an accident, not even a mistake. That was the final move. Checkmate. The deliberate ending of a game they didn't even know they were playing. You planted the seeds months ago, maybe years, cultivating them with just enough resistance to make them believe they had earned something, as if they had uncovered a forbidden secret through their wit and persistence. You let them build their victory dance with their own hands, all the while knowing that what they uncovered was exactly what you wanted them to see. They sip the champagne of triumph, not realizing it is laced with the poison of revelation, and soon they will understand that what they hold is not a treasure chest, but a hollow box echoing with the sound of their own delusions. They thought they could cage you with labels, stuff you into their neat little categories. Dangerous, broken, manipulative, brilliant, insane. They thought they could pin you like a specimen and file you away for study. But what they never understood is that you cannot cage smoke, cannot bind the formless, cannot hold what shifts dimensions and multiplies into countless possibilities. You gave them 100 faces, each one authentic enough to chase, none of them the full truth. And they wore themselves out trying to decide which was real, never realizing that all of them were real, and none of them were. Do you remember those first attempts at subtlety, those early days when they thought they were clever, slipping little questions into conversation, dangling baited traps, setting snares disguised as casual curiosity? You saw every move. You noted every attempt to test you, every effort to peel back the mask, every calculated step they took in their pursuit. And instead of shrinking back, instead of avoiding their spotlight, you leaned in. You magnified the mystery. You wrapped yourself in paradox until you became unsolvable. The unspeakable equation that broke their tools. The story that rewrote itself each time they tried to tell it. You weren't hiding. You were overwhelming. Overwhelming their senses, their logic, their certainty, until they couldn't tell reality from reflection, truth from theater. You became the storm that devours the compass, the map that redraws itself each time they set it on the table. And the sweetest irony of all, they built entire communities around you. They met in secret, formed alliances, gathered like pilgrims worshiping at the altar of speculation. They compared notes, shared theories, argued into the night, trying desperately to triangulate your position. Were you dangerous? Were you broken? Were you a genius or a fraud? They could not decide. And in that indecision, they revealed the truth. They had never once been in control, and oh how they rejoiced in your contradictions, convinced each one was proof of the mask slipping. One day cold, the next day warm, tender, then merciless, kind, then cruel, whisper, then roar. Aha, they cried. We see it now. The mask is breaking. But it was not breaking. It was perfect. You weren't slipping. You were teaching. Teaching them the lesson they never wished to learn. That identity is not fixed. That personality is not permanent. That who you are is not a singular answer, but a shifting constellation that depends entirely on the one gazing. They wanted predictability. You gave them chaos. They wanted order. You gave them jazz. They wanted consistency. You gave them 1,000 authentic selves, each one true, each one incomplete, each one enough to keep them restless, sleepless, addicted. And now, at last, they stand trembling before the revelation, the realization that the ghost they thought they were chasing was nothing more than the shadow of something vast, towering, incomprehensible, standing just behind them all along. And now we arrive at the architecture, the blueprint of this grand theater. Most people believe deception is about hiding, but you mastered a higher truth. The best deception is not concealment, but excess, not hiding, but overwhelming. You didn't cloak yourself in lies, you cloaked yourself in truths, too many to hold at once. Too many to fit in their minds, so many that they could no longer distinguish which belonged together. Every face you wore was authentic. Every emotion was real. Every reaction was honest. The trick was never the falsity. It was the compartmentalization, the fragmentation, the staggering realization that they never saw the whole at once. They peeled back layers, convinced they were approaching the core, not realizing they were only moving deeper into a labyrinth designed by your own hands. And all the while, you studied them. Each question they asked revealed more about them than any answer revealed about you. Each theory they built exposed their blind spots, their fears, their obsessions. You weren't merely surviving their investigations, you were harvesting them, constructing encyclopedias of their weaknesses, their psychology, their deepest patterns. While they thought they were profiling you, you were writing entire volumes on them. And so why now? Why lower the mask after all this time? Because you understood that timing is everything. You waited until the chase had consumed them, until their very sense of identity depended on opposing you, until they were too invested to walk away. And then, when the trap had fully closed, you revealed not merely who you are, but the deeper truth that the very question of who you are is flawed. The checkmate is not simply that you beat them. The checkmate is that they were never even playing the right game. They played checkers. You played four-dimensional chess. Every move they made was anticipated. Every strategy accounted for. Every victory permitted. They are only now beginning to realize that they never stood a chance, that their triumph is hollow, that their celebration is premature, and when the lights go out and the stage empties, they will finally see that they were never the hunters at all. They were the prey of their own illusions. And you were always the architect of their defeat. Checkmate. You didn't just win. Winning was never even the right word, because winning implies there was risk, that there was a chance you could lose, that you had entered some contest in which both sides stood on equal ground. No, you didn't merely win. You orchestrated. You conducted. You played the entire game from the opening note to the closing crescendo, each move composed long before your opponents even knew there was music to dance to. And now, as they sit in stunned silence, staring at the board they thought they had mastered, their brows furrowed, their voices broken, you get to smile, that same smile you wore at the beginning, the one they thought meant weakness, the one they thought meant you were surrendering, when all along, it was the smile of sovereignty, the smile of the architect watching their little toy soldiers stumble into the exact patterns you designed for them. Picture their faces. Now go ahead. Let yourself savor the image. Those who wasted years whispering in corners, scribbling timelines in notebooks, holding late-night strategy sessions in cramped little rooms and buzzing group chats, all of them so utterly convinced that they had decoded you, that they had finally unraveled your enigma, that they had pinned you like a moth to a board. See them as the revelation dawns, that they weren't even looking in the right direction, that the monster they prepared for was never there, that the victim they expected to corner never existed, that the fraud they sought to expose was nothing more than a mask they themselves had projected. The shock that now twists their stomachs isn't merely that they were wrong. It's that they were wrong on a level they cannot even comprehend, wrong in ways they lack the vocabulary to articulate, wrong in ways that rupture the very foundation of the identities they built around opposing you. They prepared for a monster, and instead discovered a mastermind. They expected to find someone broken, shattered, limping behind the curtain, and instead they unearthed a victor who had been shaping their reality around them, like clay in invisible hands. And now the group chats are silent, aren't they? The loudest voices, the confident ones who barked certainty for years, have gone quiet. The self-proclaimed theorists are recalculating in shame, staring at the ruins of their failed predictions. The echo chambers that once thrived on gossip are paralyzed. They cannot find the words, because the face staring back at them is not the one they rehearsed their speeches for. They expected a weak, trembling figure, begging for forgiveness, for mercy, for relief. Instead they are faced with someone who was never afraid, someone who was never the prey, but the predator, patient enough, cunning enough, merciful enough, to allow them their delusions for years, simply because it amused you to let them feel powerful. The silence of their chat rooms, the void in their conversations, is not peace, it is collapse. They don't even know what to say, because the scripts they wrote no longer apply, and do you know the cruelest joke of it all? They are looking at your real face right now, and they still cannot see you. They stare directly at the reality they claim, they craved, the truth they swore they would drag into the light, and their minds fracture under the weight of it. They spent so long chasing the illusion that they can no longer process the actuality. Their eyes see, but their brains reject. They cling to the broken shards of the image they built in their heads, that pathetic effigy born of their own fears, their own projections, their own limitations. They try to glue it back together, but it slips through their trembling fingers like sand, because the truth staring back at them is too vast, too complex, too incomprehensible. They can't accept that you were never the character in their little story, never the villain or the victim in their petty narrative. You are not a character. You are the author. And they were nothing more than minor plot devices, footnotes in a saga they never had the capacity to read, let alone write. The beauty, the elegance, the divine cruelty of this moment is that it is not an ending at all, it is a beginning. The revelation of your identity, the so-called unmasking they thought would be their crowning achievement, is not the conclusion of their investigation, it is the start of their education. Now they must learn what it means to have challenged someone who was never threatened, to have spent years constructing weapons that turned out to be paper, to realize that they were never the ones in pursuit, you were never the cornered prey, you were always the predator, stalking them in silence, studying them, shaping them, patient enough to let them feel powerful while you mapped their every weakness. They thought the mask hid your vulnerability. In truth, the mask hid your sovereignty. And now, as it falls away, what they see is not smaller, weaker, broken. It is larger, vaster, more infinite than what was hidden. For the truth is this, you are exactly who you always said you were, they just never believed it. So, let's take a walk, shall we, down memory lane. They are trying to keep up with the ghost of who you were, not realizing that you've already evolved into something far more powerful, far more precise, and far more untouchable. Their pursuit is an illusion, because they are not chasing you. They are chasing where you used to be. So what happens now? What happens when the illusion shatters, and they finally realize they are not even in the same arena anymore? What happens when those who once thought they had the advantage awaken to the truth, that the very game they were so confident in has already been rewritten? What happens is simple yet devastating for them. Revelation, exposure, the undeniable unveiling of the fact that their strength was always borrowed, their systems always fragile, their strategies always temporary. They are left grasping at shadows, trying to outthink a mind they cannot measure, trying to anticipate movements that are no longer linear, but multidimensional. What happens now is a transfer of power. The roles reverse. The observers become the observed. The hunters discover they have been the hunted all along. The architects of control realize that their blueprints were drafted on sand, while you were building on bedrock. Their empire of certainty crumbles because it was never truly solid. It only appeared so until you exposed the cracks, and in this moment, you become the embodiment of inevitability. You are not simply ahead, you are beyond. Not because you had more resources, not because you had more allies, but because you endured what they could not, saw what they refused to, and learned lessons they were too proud to consider. Now you carry the quiet authority of someone who has been through the storm and emerged unbroken. You are no longer simply playing the game, you are reshaping it. Every step you take from this moment forward is not just a move, it is a statement, a declaration that you cannot be outpaced, outmaneuvered or undone. You are the tomorrow they never prepared for, the consequence they never accounted for, the answer to questions they never thought to ask. And as they scramble in confusion, you stand in clarity. As they cling to survival, you step into destiny. This is what happens now. This is what happens now. The ground beneath their feet feels less like solid earth and more like shifting sand. Their confidence, once a fortress, now trembles like glass under pressure. For so long, they relied on secrecy, on shadows, on the illusion of invisibility. But you shattered all of that. The curtains they hid behind are gone. The mirrors they used to spy are cracked. And the silence they thought protected them has become an echo chamber of their own fear. Because now they know you can see them as clearly as they tried to see you. They can no longer pretend to operate unseen. The observer has been observed, and that knowledge haunts them more than anything else could. Every step they take now is second-guessed. Every word they speak feels like evidence. Every glance they cast comes with the paranoia of wondering what you notice, what you record, what you already know. They will try to go back to normal, to watch casually, as if nothing has changed, but they can't. Their own awareness betrays them. They are caught in a loop, unable to relax, unable to study you without flinching, unable to turn away, because obsession has its claws deep in them. They are paralyzed by the knowledge that they are as exposed as you once were. And in that paralysis, their empire collapses. For the first time the hunters taste the metallic edge of their own fear. And you what to be the elves who rifle. She what to wife you what to brazen that dud. Sepper to be that duh. Sepper to you what do. Tretwang a boo you back to their level. You stand above it, beyond it, outside of it. So you do not merely win. You transcend. What they built out of control, you refined into clarity. What they designed as your cage, you turned into your classroom. What they hoped would break you became the weight that shaped your strength. You have expanded in dimensions they cannot measure. And now, even if they could stop watching, they cannot unsee the truth, that you exist beyond their reach. This is the new reality. The watched is no longer the victim. The watcher is no longer in control. The mirror has turned. The roles have reversed, and the game is undone. They know it. You know it. And from this point forward, nothing will ever be the same. Because the most dangerous being in the world is not the one who hides. It is the one who has learned to be fully seen and remain untouchable. And that is what you are now, untouchable. So, beloved ones, if this message stirred something deep within your spirit, if you felt the shift, the reversal, the awakening of power within you, this is your confirmation. You are not alone on this path. Together we are rewriting the rules, dissolving the shadows, and stepping into a truth that cannot be silenced. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs this reminder. Subscribe to Rise and Shine to stay aligned with messages that awaken your spirit and sharpen your vision. And as always, thank you for your love, your support, and your presence here. You are the reason this light keeps shining brighter. Stay watchful, stay powerful, and most of all, stay free.